What's up, SGDI family? My name is Yusuf Jai.
And my name is Shama Shazam, and we are the hosts of
SGDI Talks. And today we're joined by two amazing people to come on the show. We got a very important topic on hand, much needed conversation. But before we get into that, I want to just bring it to them to introduce themselves, tell the people who you are, and then from there, we're going to dive right in.
All right. How we doing, everybody? Some call me Manaja. Some call me Supervisor. You guys can call me Habib Jalani.
Okay.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Pleasure. Pleasure is ours.
My name's Najia. Lovely to be here. Thank you guys. And I'm a business consultant. I'm from Philly, and I'm ready to talk.
We're ready to talk as well. Appreciate you guys. For sure. Definitely happy for you guys to be here. As we mentioned, we got a very important topic on hand today. We're going to be talking about therapy and why it's so stigmatized in the minority community. So before we even get into it, I feel like this is going to be a teach and learning moment, even for us, myself and Shama as well as who's hosting the show, because there's a lot that goes on behind this conversation. A lot of things that's either misinformed or people just want to know about it, but they don't know what to do or how to get more information. So are you guys in therapy? I just want to start off. Are any of you guys in therapy or have been in therapy currently, in the past, or thinking about going to therapy?
I'll let you
You
go
want me
first.
to take it? So, me personally, I was in therapy for a year.
Okay.
I am no longer in therapy. My therapist said, girl, get out my office. This is over. So, but I would not hesitate if needed to, I would not hesitate to return to therapy.
So when you say like she kicked you out, was it because it was done for you? Like she felt as though like you were a good functioning human being, or more as like, no, I don't want to deal with you anymore type of thing?
That's an amazing question. It was more of the first of you. We've done the work. You know, we've done what you've set out to accomplish, and I can't become a crutch. You technically don't need me anymore, and I won't make you pay me for services. You know,
Integrity.
that you don't
Love
need.
that.
I know, right?
Yeah. She could have easily just kept you coming in
Exactly.
and take your money.
I tried to say, y'all. I was
But
like,
did you agree, just to add to that as well, did you agree with that stance? Did you understand where she came from, or did it take you time to then realize, like, I see what she meant by saying that?
you know how you get that little twinge in your chest when people say things, and you're
Yeah.
like, I don't agree, but that's how it felt. I had an internal conflict in the moment, but in review of our time together and just looking at where I was presently, both, you know, emotionally and mentally, and even like spiritually and professionally, like I was like, no, you know, Megan's right. I'm all right.
Yeah.
I can move on. So yeah.
That's a great adult
Valid,
decision.
valid.
Yeah.
Babe, what's up? What about you?
Me personally, I'm not, but I do have some relatives who have, and we've had conversations about it, long talks about it.
Yeah.
And I'm also psychology is my minor.
Oh, nice.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes
I'm
sense.
interested. Yeah,
Mhm.
so I'm just here to offer my personal insight, and I also like to consider myself an empath.
Okay.
So I have a really good time relating with people.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I'll be able to. My 2 cents is, I think it has value.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, like, with your like family members or people who are close to you taking therapy, have you seen growth within them, or have you seen like a change within them?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
okay.
definitely have. It's actually one of my older relatives, my brother, actually.
That's close to
And
home.
Very close to them.
And
You knew him your whole life.
exactly. And also at times when sometimes it's good to rely on family.
Right.
And when you have situations, for example, he was in Virginia and I was in Philadelphia.
Right.
So it's like a phone call, it's always easy to say, how are you?
Right.
But sometimes also having that personal connection in person, it can benefit someone.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
a therapist is that connection sometimes when family's not available.
Right.
Can be that option.
All right, that makes sense. And even furthermore to that point, for both of y'all, I feel like because of your experience of hadn't gone to therapy and you're somebody who's considering it and also studying psychology, for you, I want to know what made you seek therapy to begin with.
Right.
And for you, since this is the ballpark you're in, what's your degree? Do you feel like that's what's influenced you to think about therapy, or had you not even been a psych major, you would have considered it regardless? So either way, either one of y'all can go first.
You
just
go
to get
first.
it.
Stop
Sweet, I like that.
So I guess I'll tackle the major part first,
Yeah.
the studying part first. I've always been interested in psychology. It actually started in high school. I took an AP Psych class. I was like, why not? At first, it was,
It's very interesting.
for the academic parts, just to raise the
Yeah.
GPA up.
Yeah, for sure.
But once I actually got into the class, I found out how interesting it was.
It was. That's how I felt too.
And
Yeah.
just how people, the history of it as well. The history is not. There's some, unethical parts that
Yeah,
don't
for
participate,
sure.
of course.
For sure.
And just also the development of just psychology as just a a study.
Yeah. Sigmund
It's
Freud.
so interesting.
I don't listen. Me and Sigmund? Nope.
Like, I can only imagine just like as the development of the psychology being a subject, how much Sigmund was just reading people for this, like telling them about themselves, and I can only imagine the scrutiny he probably went through as well. But like lo and behold, the grandfather of psychology has definitely done a lot of good.
Yeah, good and questionable.
Yes, definitely questionable. Definitely questionable.
No,
Make
legit.
sure you bring that part.
You gotta talk about that too.
Legit. So I would say that for me, it definitely, what caused me to seek out therapy was definitely where I was spiritually, and how I was cultivating this relationship with God. But so many things were changing around me. So I was losing friends that I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. I was, out of old, past, romantic relationships and not wanting to revisit those. I had a new job. And then my life just wasn't going the way I thought it would go post high school. So I was like, okay, maybe I do need to talk to somebody. And that's where it started. But really in getting in the room and doing the work, I was like, no, I need to be here because it's helping me see I'm not okay and I do need help. Because, so many times we go through life storms and we're like, I got this, or I'm going to be okay, or I just got to make it to the other side, right? And oftentimes that's not enough. That's not enough to get us through. That's not enough to get us to the other side without a lot of damage taking place. So for me, it was first the fact that I was like, I need someone to talk to. But then in getting there, I was like, no, I actually need help. And this is helping me see that I do have issues that I need to work through. So yeah, I'm happy I went.
I like that. There was a key phrase that you said that I think is really, really impactful, is doing the work. And I think that a lot of people, I think that part of therapy is what either scares them or deters them away from actually doing the work.
I agree.
For sure. And this is something that is really big within our community.
Yes.
Which kind of segues into the next question that we kind of have is why do you think therapy is such a taboo topic within our community? Why is it something that once therapy is brought up, it's like a big bad, it's evil, whereas though historically speaking, scientifically speaking, politically speaking, our people need therapy the most. We've dealt with the most trauma and continuously deal with the most trauma.
I agree. I would say when I think about, so I used to work in research, and we had to get a lot of foreknowledge about research and its relationship with Black and Brown communities. And in, getting the certifications, learning more, and even, my time in school, learning about our relationship with the medical field, period. We see a lot of abuse, right? Carry on. We think about Tuskegee, we think the experiments, and we think about, findings Black people are just, stronger, period. All around, we're just stronger, apparently. And, they try to affirm these things politically, socially, in every setting. So I think it was a very strategic form of oppression that we experienced at one time. And so anything that resembles it, we often we tell each other, you know, in that communal way, like, no, this is not good. Don't go over there. Or if you do this, you'll get this output. So I think there's a lot of that to date.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that, especially with the generation before our parents, their
Yeah.
parents, like our grandparents.
Yeah.
They ask one of them if they've been to therapy.
Yeah. Trust.
Farm few.
Mhm.
So I think it is that that systemic like overview and that like relationship that Black and brown people have
That's a
had
really good point.
with
Yeah.
you know, just the medical field and like
Yes.
therapy and things
Yeah.
alike. Like there's a lack of trust. We don't trust.
Yeah, yo, that's a huge part.
And that also
Yeah.
plays into just why we need therapy too, because
Yeah.
you know we lack trust, and trust being one of the founding and if not most important building blocks within relationships.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
can only see how much it can affect, you know, just our everyday being.
I agree.
But Habib, we definitely want to hear your take on it as well.
Yeah, I think also the cool thing about this panel, I think, is that you know, we're all African American.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that there's different types. For example, I'm a first generation African American.
Nice.
So basically how I look at it, it's similar but in a different context.
Different lens, yeah.
Because one example that I'll give, for example, is my dad's a little older, right?
Yeah.
So when
When
he was
It's
about
funny to me because I just can relate.
Yeah.
right. So
Oh
the
my
funny thing
God.
about his situation was when he was before he was, I believe, 16, his family tried to marry him off at an early
Wow.
age. So he ended
Oh,
up like
man.
leaving the house, and he, you know, he studied a lot. He really enjoyed school, so that was, you know, that's what the reason he left actually was to keep focusing on school.
Nice.
And you know, worked hard, ended up getting a scholarship to Berkeley. But one thing that I think about is that he did all of that by himself.
Yeah.
He left his family at a young
Didn't
age.
have village.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've been evaluating is there's always different types of mindsets that people get into,
Yeah.
depending on just like their environment.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes when you're in kind of like a make it or break it situation
Yeah.
with no crutch
For
to
real.
lean on,
Mhm.
people tend to put their emotional intelligence to the side
Yeah.
and focus on, you know,
Yeah.
what needs to be
Yeah.
solved
Survival
here
mode.
and there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you topple years of that type of laser focus, I feel like sometimes you tend to, again, like if you're not working on your if you don't use it, you lose it, right?
Yeah. That's
So
true.
I feel like some people have, you know, might have parents that were in that type of dynamic,
Yeah.
or
for
they
sure.
came over, you know, not for school, but, you know, through the immigration process
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
just, you know, getting a job right after
right.
they, you know, come over.
Yeah.
And it's really it's a dog eat dog world
For
for real.
sure.
So that focus, and sometimes I feel like, you know, they might have a long shift and they come home
Yeah.
and, you know, they're expecting, you know, their whole thing is, oh, I'm working hard for the kids, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Lock it in for them. And when they come home, let's say, you know, you had a crappy day at school and, you know, you're not on your best behavior.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a whole bunch of stress. And sometimes, again, though, that's just, you know, that's not a forgive everything,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you got your self-reflection that has to be,
Yeah.
that has to
But I can
happen.
only hold you accountable for what you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Right.
love that.
Mhm.
I think that a lot of, especially for us too, like I'm Haitian, you know, first generation Haitian. So I think with us getting into, you know, adulthood,
Yeah.
even though it's ghetto here, but us going into adulthood and also diving into therapy and psychology and understanding what stress, anxiety are, these things, we kind of to allude what you said, like we kind of give our parents some grace.
Yeah.
You know, because like I don't even want to know how much minimum wage was back then. And think about
Yeah.
all the things that they've done for us. Though, you know, it doesn't excuse it, but of course, knowledge is power, and not being able to know about these things and kind of be able to, yes, you went through a very
Yeah.
crappy day, but you didn't communicate correctly. The way how you communicate to, you know, how you communicate to someone who's a kid is different to how you communicate to someone who's a grown up. And I definitely think that this is why, therapy and how we speak to each other and, emotional triggers, all of these things, though they're buzzwords, they're very important. And I think that now is the time we really need to kind of get into, there's this thing now about like soft parenting and, you beat your kids. And it's like, I think that it's just, this should be just a new generation of how we deal with kids, knowing that we've been there before. Kids have stress too. How do we deal with their stress and regulate our stress, and also be human? Because to them, we're superheroes. So we gotta humanize ourselves a little bit.
Yeah,
that's a very good point.
And even to both of y'all points, y'all mentioned first generation African, Haitian. I think that's the cool part about having this conversation with you guys, because we do look at it from a lens of kind of bridging the gap. Like we're here, we also gonna have the generation of our kids, but we see the prior generation of our parents, and being as though we're the ones that started, we still do have an understanding of what they didn't have and what we have at our disposal. So with that information, I do think we gotta try to just. I love the fact that you said give grace, but also understand that everybody's not in our position too. There's some people that's not first generation. There's some people that wasn't privy to this information. Because think about it, I don't know about y'all, but 10 years ago, I didn't know mental health was a term. That was not a thing. I know I was sad or I was happy. Like it wasn't really much around it, but now it's so much nuances. It's not really black and white. Like even hearing you guys speak is refreshing to see how educated you are on the subject matter. And I think we need to lead with this so people can also be able to have a takeaway. Because right now, when I talk to a lot of my younger cousins and, people I know that's a little younger, it's very much like, I don't like my parents or they don't understand me. They're so mean. But if you really think about it, though, they're really, and there's no excuse, like you said, they can only love you the way they know how. They don't understand the love languages. They may not be able to cater to you on a, physical touch or I loves you or a hug, but in their mind, like you said, like whether it's paying bills or making sure you're eating, you're not never going to bed hungry, they're really trying. So I think the best thing we could do is just try to just make sure we're fit for when we get married now, when we have our kids. Just like people always talk about, like, generational curses. Let it stop here, They don't have to pass on. Like, now that it's here, what are you going to do when it's your turn? And I think that's where I really want a lot of people that's like listening to this to try to see where can you take this from now and move forward and propel in the right direction.
Can I piggyback off you right there?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like how you mentioned like the facts about generations.
Yeah.
One thing, even when you look back home, right?
Yeah.
For example, it's not really too much spoken about like in public, or it's really not spoken about until like you're in a situation where it has to be mentioned.
Yeah.
But for example, one thing is, I think it's a general fear that some people might have of just mentioning therapy, because to some people, like you guys mentioned, it is it's seen as a taboo for some reason, for like
it's seen as weakness.
It's seen as weakness. As crazy as that sounds, it does seem as for some reason,
but it's not. Right. And the thing is, though, when you're back home, for example, I'll just give the example of marriage. Let's say, right?
Yeah.
You could have somebody that walks up to, just this example, a guy walks up to a pretty lady, right? They get to know each other, and he wants to marry her, right?
Yeah.
Some families still uphold this, and it's even me learning it and hearing it in conversation, and it's just like a norm. But it's like we'll say once, and then like people get it. But it's like people will ask like, what's their last name? And that's all just to be traced back because, there used to be a caste system. People don't talk about it though, what I'm saying? But that's like an old fashioned thing. And some people, so the last name carries a lot of weight. And some people might see, some people who don't understand therapy might see that and, they talk, Some countries are small, you know what I'm saying? So people know each other, in certain socioeconomic classes. And those people gossip,
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not gonna lie. Our culture does like to talk. You know what I'm saying?
They be on the phone all the time. The WhatsApps be going crazy.
You know what I'm saying? We got social media accounts dedicated to it. So
that's crazy.
And it's something that you said, which like really clicked for me too. is that it's a lot of people see therapy as weakness, but the crazier part is therapy is just like the gym, right? You don't necessarily see somebody as weak if they say they're going to the gym.
Right.
You actually see them in the light of they want to get better.
Yeah.
Therapy is literally the gym of the mind.
Literally.
Just as much as you go into the gym and you have to once you start out with the 15 and after a while you start lifting 25. It's just as much because first you'll start out and you'll start unpacking things that you've put away, and then you'll realize more and more of why you do certain things, why certain things put you in an anxiety state or this, that, and the third, and it allows you to navigate life better. And it's as crazy as it is that it doesn't matter how strong you are muscle wise, your mind has to be the strongest part of your body.
That's a fact.
It has to.
And lifting weights can't cure that either.
It can't. You know what I'm saying?
That's the part. Yeah.
Like what if let's say you have a certain phobia, right? It doesn't matter how much you ever see somebody who's really muscular but scared of like dogs, like a smallest dog. It's like, bro, you got all those muscles. Why? You know what I'm saying? But it's really it's a mental thing, right? It's a mental thing. An elephant can be afraid of a mouse.
That's true.
That's
So
crazy.
it's
bro.
like it just goes to show you that like we really have to change how therapy is seen.
You still laughing about it because you seen it happen before. Like, why you scared of a little dog, bro?
Come on, man. But
man.
yo, it's true. Like the mind is the strongest muscle you have in your body, and you need to do the work to strengthen
That's
it.
a fact.
And I know I've been very because like the question was asked. I haven't necessarily done therapy in front of a therapist, but I've done a lot of self-therapy. And I personally think that, not to say that not going in front of somebody is important, you know. I think that a lot of the times therapy is just asking yourself the hardest questions.
Yeah.
Like when you're in a room, you can't lie to yourself.
You can.
Right? You can lie to everyone
You can lie
else.
to the whole world.
But you can't lie to yourself, right? Somebody else is like, yo, are you okay? You're like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just tired. But you can't lie to yourself. Am I okay? I'm just tired. Come on, man. Come on. Like, we here.
I feel that.
You feel me? So I think that asking yourself the harder questions, why did you snap? Like, why are you angry all the time?
Yeah.
Like, why do you feel the need to be everywhere with everyone? You know, like,
Yeah.
there's questions that I had asked myself for a while, and I found out, like, it was a couple of years ago, I found out I was lonely. I was really lonely at the time.
Yeah.
And it was while I was in a lot of groups of people. Like, I'm in a room full of people.
Sometimes that's where you realize the most. It's like, wait, like,
That's
you're in the same room, but you kind of feel detached.
Exactly.
Or,
That's
like,
crazy,
you know,
yeah.
you're on the outside looking in,
Exactly.
even though like you're surrounded by a bunch of people.
Yeah, and I realized that I needed to start a journey of self-love because I was trying to get everyone else to love me, you know? And so in that journey, I've become even better with being within myself and being with myself, which kind of brings me to another question, right? With you guys being in therapy and, you know, also witnessing somebody in therapy as well, how do you navigate coming out of therapy or noticing the practices of therapy, right? And seeing your friends or family member who you think like you need therapy. Like, how do you navigate
That's
that?
a tough spot, yeah.
Your turn.
You're so polite, trying to get people talk.
So I love that question. I think one of the biggest things that happened for me after transitioning out of therapy was realizing that our relationship with therapy as Black and brown people is really just a symptom of a larger issue. Like it's really not even the therapy so much. It's where we are broken and fractured in here and then out here as well. Like it's all the parts. It just exposes the many parts where we have not done the work. Where we refuse to do the work. And it really starts here. It starts with family. It starts with community. It starts with the people you see every day. And if you don't choose to do that with those people, then how will you impact the world? How will you reach somebody who's a stranger? How will you reach the people that really need it? And so I think that was a big realization for me after transitioning out. And then the second, as far as like having family and friends in view, it really was a test of humility for me.
Okay.
Like, it pushed me to humble myself and be
Mhm.
like, you know, I can't diagnose you because just like you don't know, I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's-
And I need to
That's
realize
love.
the privilege
I love that.
that I
Yeah.
have as someone who was able to sit in front of someone and get what she needed,
Right.
and is still getting what she needs. She's just not in the room anymore.
Right.
But it was really a test of humility of, you know, I won't blame you. I won't charge you for what you don't know. I'll love you through it. I'll love you anyway. And not to say people should just be able to do whatever they want,
Right.
and that they shouldn't be held accountable.
Yeah.
It actually empowered me
Yeah.
to hold them accountable, because
Yeah.
humility is just courage. It's just
Yeah.
the courage and to be meek and to be lowly and to surrender in a
Yeah.
moment and be like, hey, this is not about winning.
Yeah.
I don't want to dominate you.
Yeah.
I want to reach a point of collaboration
Yeah.
where you feel loved and I feel loved,
Yeah.
and we can move forward.
Yeah.
So, it was definitely a test of humility too. It was like, am I going to get out here and pop fly?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
am I going to get out here and love on my neighbor
Yeah.
and love them as I love myself?
And I would only
I love
assume that would be more of a test of your growth as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. The proof is in the pudding.
I like that.
There you go.
Give me two of those. Give me two.
Habib, how you feeling about that question? You know?
It's a heavy question.
Yeah.
He asking heavy questions.
So,
We here
I
to
think,
talk.
That was a good question. That was a good job. That was a good point.
I think so. Basically, just to kind of reiterate on the question, it was
Yeah.
kind of like how I like the effects of therapy on my family member.
So
essentially.
essentially, like knowing, so you being a psych major, right?
Right.
You know anxiety, you know how the triggers, you know
Yeah.
all these words and all these definitions that help you understand the fullness of mental health. With having that understanding and now, like, you know, you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
With people who are in the dark, like, how do you navigate, like, seeing somebody and like, oh, you're anxious? You know,
Yeah.
like, so to give you an example, right? With me being able to do my own journey,
Uh-huh.
it was my grandma's birthday just came, and my mom, aunt, and a lot of, you know, my uncles, they were like planning a party for her. We got to New York, and like, I'm an empath too. My mom and aunt were super anxious, and it's like, why am I anxious? I'm looking over, I'm like, you're anxious.
Yeah.
Calm down. What do you
Yeah.
need to do?
Yeah.
And so, like, because I know what anxiety is now, it was years ago, I didn't know. I used to have panic attacks, not
Mhm.
even know.
Mm.
But now knowing it, I can address it. And so, like, being able to like address my mom, like, you're anxious, you need to breathe, calm down, because I feel it, and I don't want to be here, essentially.
Okay. I think the funny thing so I'll start off. It kind of started before even school, to the sense that, you know, when I was growing up, so I have in total I have 3 brothers and a sister. So 2 from my mother, 2 boys included, and plus me, that makes 3. So basically, I was the youngest, and my middle brother's name was Hakeem. He was autistic and nonverbal,
Okay.
right? So, you know, the funny thing is, I always laugh at these tropes that people create when it's like, you know, the youngest child is always, he's this way, that way. The oldest is that way, this way. Yeah. And so I'm not gonna lie, it's not all false. Okay. Like I did, you know what I'm saying? I'm grateful that, you know, I have parents that were able to, you know, I didn't grow up like, you know, seeking anything that I didn't, you know, wasn't able to have given to me.
That's a good way to
And I'm
put it.
grateful.
That's a good way to put it.
But however, I will say that it was a lot of work for my mother, and it wasn't easy. But at the same time, I used to, you know, be questionable about how I was raised. But then as I analyzed myself, and the funny thing is I've become so analytical because of how I grew up.
Yeah.
Because I spent a lot of time like in my room by myself. So the funny thing is in my head, you know, that little voice in your head, he ended up becoming, well, it's myself, but
Can't lie to me.
it's my best friend, you know?
Yeah.
So like, and I realized a lot of social interactions when you're in public, how you react on the outside depends on how you're thinking about it or perceiving it on the inside. And another thing too is one of my favorite memories with my mother was she was always taking care of my older brother, right? But the few times growing up that I would have, and like just with her, my favorite memory was one time we went to the mall and we got a couple of ice creams and we just sat on a bench and we people watched.
Yeah.
Aw.
And
It's very fun.
she asked me one time, it's like, what do you think this guy's thinking about? And ever since I think I was 7 at the time.
Yeah.
I would look, and first I was confused, but then I would look, squinting in the eyes, tight fist. That might be somebody who might be, annoyed. He might have had a hard day.
Yeah.
And it also helped me navigate through, I could tell my mother's stressed.
Yeah.
She's tired. So,
She was so
maybe,
sensitive.
yeah. And I have a lot, I would always ask a lot of questions growing up. Why is this that way? Why is this way?
Seeking
Yeah,
understanding.
exactly.
Yeah.
And for sometimes I would check the room, read the room, maybe it's not the right time for all these questions.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I grew up and just how I perceive the world. It's
Right.
kind of like, when you're an empath, I realize that might be sometimes a superpower in the sense, because putting yourself in other people's shoes is, I like to call it a skill,
It is.
because not everybody can do
I
that.
call it my superpower.
Yeah, and I don't want to say there's a lot of dynamics in social interactions, but it can kind of help you guide an interaction.
Yeah.
And I take it most empaths have good hearts.
Yeah.
So if you learn to use it right,
Yeah.
you can uplift the room, or you know what I'm saying, make people feel better.
For sure.
And that's kind of what makes me want to get into psychology, is kind of also, I want to understand other people.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I realize most of my stress in life, working in teams, is communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor communication.
Yeah.
How do you communicate better if
Yeah.
everybody can understand themselves even 1% better?
Absolutely.
And I feel personally, psychology, the thought of people taking therapy to, get a better understanding on themselves,
Yeah.
I think that's all very important,
Sure.
to have a well-oiled up society,
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Absolutely.
I definitely agree with that. And I think if anything, you guys have definitely left an impression that people can learn from and take away. And this is why we were so excited for this topic, and it was so near and dear to our heart.
No.
So before we just wrap up, I do think it's only fitting that for the people that's out there again, because I always like to segue to the people that's watching, the people that have a lot of questions. If someone right now is considering going to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
they're not really sure, trying to find their way, but they're just stuck in
Mhm.
that thought process, what's one piece of advice you can leave with them about encouraging them to take that next step to go to therapy?
I would say, honestly, same way that you mentioned earlier, that it's like working out you work out the body, you work out the mind too.
Yeah.
It takes time. A lot of people like to invest and get early returns. That's not how this works. That's not how life works. And essentially,
Talk about it.
if you take the time to develop it, you're gonna get tools to, combat the hardships of life, mentally. And I think that, just don't give up, because in 3 months, you're gonna be better than you were a month ago.
Absolutely.
Those who start are those who finish.
It's a journey.
That's gangster, man.
Yeah.
As simple it is. I feel that, bro. You feel me?
I love it.
What you gonna leave us with?
I'm gonna say go to therapy, because it's not about you. It's about those around you. It's about the generations that are gonna come after you.
Okay.
It's about the lives that they will impact. I think a more selfless world is a world that we all envision and desire,
Yeah.
but we often struggle to get there, especially Black and brown people. So go to therapy, because it's about the generation after you, and it's about the people you're going to impact too. So do you want them pulling water from a dirty well or a clean well? And I think that's super important. Y'all are hilarious. Y'all are
I started
hilarious.
spitting, dog. That's crazy. What?
But yeah, I just go anyway.
That was heavy. Shy, you want to leave anything?
Yeah, I
before we
definitely
end?
think you guys. something
Yeah.
else.
You started going crazy.
For real, I would say that Yes, you need to go to therapy. I definitely, like I said before, it's the gym of the mind. It's time to strengthen your mind, and really get a hold of your emotions, especially with all that's going on right now. The world is definitely amiss with a lot of different things, and a lot of changes are happening. We say it all the time. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
But I definitely think there's another part of it, and it's okay to be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. So you want to make sure that you're getting better, because just like she said too, it's about the people around you. It's about the people that come after you, and you want to, like she said, you want to be the clean water that they're pouring from or they're pulling from, essentially.
Oh my God. I'm gonna tell you right now, I do not have sometimes you gotta be smart. I'm not topping that. But what I would say is, on the behalf of the team at large, thank you so much. We
Thank you for the
appreciate it. And I'm pretty sure Shama could attest to the same thing. I was definitely somebody who questioned therapy myself, but a lot of my questions has been answered on this topic today. And I thank you guys for that. And I hope a lot of your questions for all of you who's watching at home have been answered as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Somebody got it.
That was